This is the Volvo Ocean Race, the story of a 45-year obsession. Sailing's iconic race around the world, the ultimate test of a team, and the place where elite sport meets human adventure. Achieving victory will mean dominating a 45,000 nautical mile race over 11 legs, taking in 12 host cities across 6 continents. 7 international teams are vying to add their name to the Volvo Ocean Race trophy. The race so far has been tough. Extreme Southern Ocean drag racing to windless voids that have tested the sailors to their physical and mental limits. Heading into the next leg, Spanish team Mafre continue their position at the top of the leaderboard, although their long-time rivals Dongfeng Race Team are now just 4 points behind. Hong Kong marked the end of leg 4, after which the race headed to Guangzhou. The visit marked the 4th time the Volvo Ocean Race has stopped in China over the past 10 years. Once the fleet completed an import race, it was back to Hong Kong before the start of the next leg. It would see the teams head back through some of the same water as in leg 4, but this would prove to be a very different race.
We're losing to him, we're not following our plan, and we're sailing slowly.
Just got to wait for the right opportunity. D's only 9 miles behind us.
The nightmare is over my shoulder where we've got Dongfeng and Mafre breathing down our necks.
We've got Mafre right here.
They're not far away.
Can't believe Dongfeng and Mafre there. No justice in that.
Auckland, New Zealand awaits the race fleet, but getting there won't be easy.
Well, Lexi is going to take us from here, from Hong Kong to Auckland, and it's pretty much the reverse of what we have done from Australia.
I guess the weather will be different, trade winds will be a little bit different, but it's going to be a more tighter angle leg.
Could be quite rough. I wouldn't be surprised if we could see some pretty strong winds.
The next leg is, for me, the most difficult, complicated and dangerous leg, I would say. If the doldrum is so big like it was on the previous leg, that's going to be a nightmare at the navigation table.
Psychologically, it's a tough leg. We saw how hard this area is to sail to get here. The Luzon Straits with monsoon winds, it's normally big upwind conditions, and none of the boats have done a lot of upwind sailing, so it'd be interesting.
Vestas 11th Hour Racing announced it would miss leg 6 following a tragic collision with a non-racing vessel at the end of leg 4, which resulted in the fatality of a local fisherman.
Your whole world can turn upside down in a second. I mean, here we are trying to plan our last sail change to sail the last hour and a half of what had been a 19-day leg to the finish, cash in on another podium finish, and all of a sudden you're in a whole new reality, right? You get off the boat and you look at this massive hole and you can only imagine, what happened or what the situation is with the other vessel and their crew and all their families, and that's where my head just continues to be at, even to this day. I know how difficult it's been for me and for our guys. I can only imagine how hard it's been for them.
The team had already missed the leg up to Guangzhou, and their boat had been shipped to Auckland for repair with the aim to be on the start line for the leg to Itajaí, South America. In light of the incident, the organisers of the Volvo Ocean Race have commissioned an independent review team. The aim is to look at lowering the risks further in this type of racing environment.
The team, which consists of Rear Admiral Chris Oxenberg, highly respected navigator Stan Honey and Chuck Cordy, will look at all aspects of this and any learning points that we can share with the wider sailing community in regards to racing high-speed craft at night in densely populated waters.
As the remaining 6 teams slipped their moorings in Hong Kong, there were some known quantities to the journey ahead. But with the Volvo Ocean Race, nothing can be taken for granted.
Max pressure in 10.
Here we go, the start of leg 6 from Hong Kong to Auckland, New Zealand.
Deploy the mo, guys. Go, go.
Sonderhund Kai Scallywag, great start, as with Axo Nobel.
Okay, let's go. Come on, bro. Watch down.
So it's goodbye from the bustling Chinese cities of Hong Kong and Guangzhou as we look forward to arriving in the famous Southern Hemisphere Mecca, the city of sails, Auckland, New Zealand.
Leg 6 is a 6,100 nautical mile race that will see the fleet head across the South China Sea, north of the Philippines, out into the Pacific Ocean, through the doldrums for the third time in the race, and then southeast to Auckland. Prior to the start, race officials had added a tropical storm exclusion zone to the east of the Philippines due to a cyclone that was forecast to produce heavy sea conditions. The fleet headed northeast above the zone in a drag race.
It's been quite hard for everybody, having had quite a long break in Hong Kong, to come back. But those guys that have had a leg off as a break have come back full of energy, which is great, and we really need that injection. But some people have found these conditions a little harder to cope with.
After skirting the southern tip of Taiwan, the competitors split. Sun Hung Kai Scallywag and Team Axonabel opted to head more north. The other 4 boats stuck together and sailed a more easterly route before tacking. Team Brunel, who had taken the lead within hours of the start, continued their good form.
I think just the whole feeling was really good in Hong Kong and in Guangzhou, just the way how we've been sailing the boat. Of course, a guy like Peter Burling, he wants to be home first like we all want to be, but feels good on board.
Within 72 hours of the start, more than a 100-mile gap had developed between the 2 groups of boats. It looked like heading north had not been such a good move. They were struggling with less breeze.
This feels wrong. Very wrong. We're going the wrong way. We should be going that way.
Really disappointed. We took the decision a bit quickly to tack, everything lined up and it looked quite good. So they were gone in the first 4 and it's just us 2 left racing really.
On board Sun Hung Kai Scallywag, they were sticking to their plan.
So ultimately this is long-term, trying to hook into that northerly breeze more than anything. So in theory we'll get into that first and then be able to be in a position to use the pressure there to come bows down back at the fleet.
Further south, Team Brunel had succumbed from the pressure of the chasing boats. The polished team of Mafre, who were leading the race overall, had gone to the front and pointed towards their goal of Auckland. Dongfeng Race Team matched their every move.
We just overtook one to each other a couple of times, and right now less than a mile between us. There's a lot to go, so hopefully we can keep it together and try to take our opportunities.
Sun Hung Kai Scallywag and Team Axonabel were still split from the leading 4 and were happy to be sailing their own race and tactics. They kept their nerve and rapidly made gains. Further east, the leading 4 boats, one by one, sailed into lighter airs. Within hours, it was a reversal of fortunes.
We have just absolutely smashed them. All these other guys do the Fugazi and they listen to the computer and we sort of point to where we want to go and it seems to be working quite nicely. That's the wrap up.
Fingers crossed we can keep on gaining, but there's still ages left in this race, so we're not getting ahead of ourselves.
Just 5 miles behind the Scallywags, and Team Axonabel seemed to be on form. Simin Team Point's crew tight-knit and confident in their performance. Team Point had chosen a mix of Volvo Ocean Race veterans and a handful of rookies, including a rising star in the offshore circuit, 31-year-old Cecile Leggett.
Because I'd been involved with Team SCI a lot in the last campaign, I didn't feel like I was stepping in a brand new world. However, it was the first time I was properly doing a leg of the race. The leg from Melbourne to Hong Kong was my first leg, and for me it was the longest I'd spent offshore and the longest sort of distance I'd sail in one go. You know, you got to keep the intensity for those 20 days, and I think that's the massive challenging part in this race, is that there's so many parameters to be able to keep that intensity really high and perform, and I think that's super interesting.
The trailing 4 boats were now left to jostle with each other and get back in the game in challenging conditions, at times just a boat length apart. The 2 red boats still covered each other's every move. At the front of the pack, the same story was playing out, with the lead constantly changing between Team Axonabel and the Scallywags.
It's fantastic to lead. It's always better to lead than to follow. And it also comes with its challenges, of course, you know. I mean, it's a long way and just have to have confidence in what we do and sail the boat.
As the fleet headed towards the equator, they started to compress as they entered the lighter airs. It was the beginning of the dreaded doldrums. The back markers gained ground and positions changed sometimes on an hourly basis over the next several days. There were winners and losers in the ever-changing wind and cloud lottery.
The rest of the fleet are literally hundreds of miles behind. Still more than half the points available. I think it's probably a little bit early days for the two red boats to think no one else in the race has got a chance. But time will tell.
Really complicated. Not at the good position. I think we should be more east, but we follow Maffrey, and for the first time, he make a really bad choice, I think.
Last day's been pretty challenging. We've been stuck in no wind at times, and a lot of the other boats have come past us with pressure. So I'm pretty sure we're at the back of the fleet now.
Meanwhile, more than 3,000 miles away and on dry land, Vestas 11th Hour Racing were in their own race to be ready for the start of Leg 7. Their boat had arrived in Auckland and was undergoing repairs. For the crew, it was a slow healing process.
It's been an emotional process and quite a bit of mourning and just just learning to live with what's happened and what's transpired, and this is going to be something that we're gonna live with, and that we're gonna have to learn to live with. And it's really important to me and to the team that we get back out there and we get back to racing and that we put our best foot forward. But at the same time, that doesn't take anything away from what has happened, and the fact that our thoughts continue to be with all those impacted and their families, and I think that'll continue to be the case.
After nearly 2 weeks at sea, the Volvo Ocean Race fleet were now thousands of miles from land and in 3 separate match races. In between the back markers and the leaders were Team Brunel and Turn the Tide on Plastic. And it seemed that Dee Kafari and her young team had found their mojo on this leg.
Glorious sunrise, and what really put the icing on the cake was Brunel right there on the horizon. It is crazy to sail 3,500 miles to then be sat side by side with our buddies, our Dutch buddies.
Further west, and Sunhunkai Scallywag were now back in the lead, having overtaken Team Axel Nobel.
We were a little uncomfortable last night going in a direction that we did to stay on top of Scallywag, and that cost us.
Right, we're not doing anything at the moment. We're losing to him, we're not following our plan, and we're sailing slowly.
Maffrey and Dongfeng race team had slowly reduced their once huge deficit to gain on the 4 teams in front of them. They had stuck with each other for the entire race, but the question was, at what cost?
We are officially last again. But they overtake us, we overtake them. They overtake us, we'll overtake them.
For some of the young America's Cup sailors, being at the back of the fleet was something they were not used to. But just being part of the Volvo Ocean Race for the first time was a natural step in their careers.
Yeah, I didn't manage to get much time off since America's Cup before this edition of the Volvo, but it's been something that I've definitely had no regrets. I think for this race, a lot of it was about learning as much as I could and just trying to soak up as much as I could. I definitely feel like I've been learning a lot and contributing a lot more to the team. The offshore sailing is relatively different to the inshore stuff. The inshore stuff, I think you can see a lot more what's going to happen, on the water, and it's probably a little more in control of your own destiny, where the offshore stuff, it seems like occasionally you get pretty unlucky or occasionally you get really lucky. So it's something you always make your own luck though, and we're just trying real hard to work on boat speed at the moment and just keep pushing down to NZ.
All the fleet headed southwest above the island chain of Vanuatu before skirting New Caledonia and pointing south in a drag race. Despite Turn the Tide on Plastic taking the lead for more than 2 days, it was short-lived. Team Axel Nobel were first again. Team Brunel, who had gone into stealth mode, had opted to stay closest to New Caledonia to make gains. Instead, they emerged to bad news.
It was outside of what we expected. We thought we'd already be through the lee of the island and moving, and we weren't. So it was a very bad feeling.
It was quite obvious that we actually were falling off the pressure from the 3 leading boats. Of course, you're always stressed out because what do the other boats have? And you just know they have breeze, so they just keep sailing away,
And things only got worse for them as slowly but surely Maffrey and Dongfeng race team gained on the Dutch team as they headed to the most northern point of New Zealand. The 3 leading boats by now had started to sail down the eastern side of the northern island in a dogfight. Throughout the fleet there were a number of Kiwis who were on their way home, It was a time for reflection.
I haven't been home for over a year preparing for this race, so to be able to see friends and family on the dock, it's going to be special.
Looking forward to seeing land and getting home. It's going to be good.
Anytime you sail into New Zealand, into your home port, is pretty awesome, but to be able to do it in the Volvo Ocean Race is just a dream come true.
Since the start of the race in 1973, more than 350 sailors from New Zealand have taken part, including legends like Grant Dalton, Mike Sanderson, Stuart Bannatyne and Brad Jackson. But there is one Kiwi who is synonymous with the race, Sir Peter Blake. Blake is the only skipper to have ever won all legs back-to-back during the 1989-90 Whitbread Round the World race, a record that still stands today. He became a national hero, but tragically he was killed by pirates in 2001 whilst on an environmental voyage in South America. His death shocked a nation and the sailing world, but his legacy lives on. His son James is one of a team of onboard reporters covering this edition of the race.
So I was 3 when Steinlager came in, and I've got a very vague memory of standing by the wheel, but I was 3, so I can't remember that much. And I remember that teddy bear of Winnie the Pooh, but what was funny about that bear is when he used to press his paw, he used to sing Winnie the Pooh. And I actually just found that the other day in a container of storage, and 28 years on, he still plays that little song, which actually is quite moving for me. I am the son of Sir Peter Blake, and that's something that I love, you know. He's what a legend, what a hero, and you know, that's something I've grown up with, and so I'm proud of it. I was quite young when my father died, and so one of the things that I learned from him from a young age was that he was always saying, you know, you've got to do what you want to do and what you love doing. You know, for me, taking that ethos away is key for me, and that's something that that's something I definitely learned from him. For me, the really special thing about the Volvo Ocean Race is when you kind of strip everything apart, you have these men and women out at sea working together. And I think that's something that hasn't changed since my dad's era. A lot of things have changed, whether it be the sponsorship, the corporate side, but actually when you get out on the ocean, you know, nothing has actually changed. They're still working together. It's still just as tough. It's one of the biggest challenges you can do for a sailor. I do think about him out at sea, and I think being out there actually, in some kind of way, for me, I get to know him a little bit better. You know, there's something out there that he loves, and for me to go and experience that in a small way is refreshing for me, and you know, could see what he was doing basically.
After more than 6,000 miles, Team Axonabel and Sun Hung Kai Scallywag matched raced their way down the coast of New Zealand, but soon became handicapped by a high-pressure system.
Guys, in the bow, downstairs, just get them all to come and get right on the bow now.
The pressure up the weather, really good. They've been with us.
Want to keep working him a little bit upwind.
On the trim there, he's still going forward a little bit on us there.
Just got to wait for the right opportunity. Patience.
We just picked up a little bit of breeze, which is nice, because it could be a close party, you know.
As wind speeds dropped, the fleet compressed, and it wasn't just turn the tide on plastic that was a worry for the leading 2 boats. After passing Team Brunel and having a seemingly insurmountable deficit just 24 hours before, the 2 powerhouses of Mapfre and Dongfeng race team were coming back.
We are offshore with Mapfre and fighting together again. I don't know who is the mouse, who is the cat.
On board Mapfre, homeboy Blair Tuke was greeted by friends as they raced down the coast.
It's just now we managed to see the race leaders in front. They obviously had quite a light air time for a bit. It's pretty close, so everything is on.
Where are they? There.
Yeah.
They are not far away.
Like, we're going good on Axo here. Can't believe Dongfeng and Mapfre are there. There's no justice in that.
Early leg leaders Team Brunel was still way behind and looked to have no way of coming back this late in the game. The first 5 boats were all now less than 7 miles apart. Third place Turn the Tide on Plastic were feeling the pressure.
The nightmare is over my shoulder where we've got Dongfeng and Mapfre now breathing down our necks. From being 120 miles behind, they've just caught up. The weather's played to their advantage. So for me, it's all about getting the result we deserve and the result that we deserve from the whole leg. And if it goes the wrong way, I'll be absolutely gutted.
As the light faded, the pressure increased. But for Team Axonabel and Sun Hung Kai Scallywag, their lead was just enough to stay ahead as they approached the finish line.
Just right at the tower. They're looking pretty soft. They bolt up right down there.
The margin between first and second place just 2 minutes. The pair had stuck together for the entire race. But it was Simeon Team Point's Dutch team who claimed victory, their first leg win of the race.
It was unbelievable. It was I think close to a 6,500 mile or 7,000 mile match race. And then even this morning, you know, we had a couple of lead changes. And yeah, unbelievable crew work. I'm unbelievable proud of the crew, and they did such a fantastic job. And we managed just be 1.5 mile in front and finish the leg.
We never give up. We're still trying right to the end. So you know, we had a couple of opportunities that we didn't take, and you know, hats off to Axonabel. They sailed really, really well. We put as much pressure as we could on for 3 weeks, and they stood strong. So they deserve the win.
With less than 2 hours to the finish line, the unthinkable happened for Turn the Tide on Plastic. The Spanish team of Mapfre snatched their podium spot from under their noses. And even after a long battle with Dongfeng race team all the way into Auckland's harbour, they lost their 4th place by just minutes. A bitter blow.
Been fighting, of course, with Dongfeng like crazy. You know, that's the war. We never stop, and we fought so hard that now we feel very happy, of course.
Sorry for Turn the Tide because they did a fantastic race and I think they deserve the 3rd place, but that's silly.
The first 5 teams had all finished within half an hour of each other. It had been a hugely stressful and intense race, an unprecedented climax to the finish of a leg. The only consolation for Turn the Tide on Plastic was they showed the rest of the teams they had matured into a force to be reckoned with and posted their best performance ahead of last place Team Brunel.
We're pretty gutted, and you can tell by the fact that nobody stood along the deck. I don't actually even know what to say. Gutted. We had a good race, and we thought we were going to have a better result, but those pesky red boats always seem to get it their way.
After Team Axonabel's win and Sun Hung Kai Scallywag's 2nd podium finish in a row, the top of the overall leaderboard has been shaken up. They both move into 4th and 3rd respectively, behind Mapfre and Dongfeng race team. The old guard should be worried, with leg 7 offering double points. Next stop, Itajaí, Brazil, one of the most iconic legs in the entire race. There will be more tortuous Southern Ocean, the rounding of the infamous Cape Horn, before heading north up the coast of South America to the finish line.